Attempt 3. So far, I have had 0 unsuccessful commentary areas and 2 legitimate deaths to the boss that is about to introduce herself. So the plot basically is that Reimu gets gapped out of the fight because, well, let's just say that fantasy nature is not something you want to be up against. It's kind of a canonical hacker card. But Yukari, the boundary yokai, shows up and basically informs you that you're going to hell because the incident cannot be resolved from this side of the boundary. And Yukari's argument is that, hey, it's a familiar place. You should be happy to go there. One may argue that hell is not a great place to go even if you know about it, which would probably be why you object. And, well, enter the blue portal, and you can leave this episode behind. Enter the red portal, and you will see the true nature of the boundary. All Yukari offers is the choice. Nothing more and nothing less. So the blue portal, as you could probably surmise, ends the episode. The red portal takes you to the last extra stage. This extra stage is a real trip, so let's get right into it. Welcome to playing literal Touhou. This is just literally Touhou in the Doom engine. But when I say that, I mean that quite literally this time. So this stage is extremely planned. You have to know what you're doing. Being blind will kill you. Homing amulets are quite good for dealing with the small fry fairies because you don't have much in the way of spread since you're forced to be aiming up at all times. You can try shake, but it's not very effective. Okay, these fairies you want to misdirect. You can take a few bullets. The thing is, you still have full reserve of health. You can take a few hits as long as you aren't tanking all of them. It's pretty hard. You say, to make maximum use of Persuasion Needle, you really need to be getting under enemies, which makes it kind of hard to do so. So I'll switch to Yukari Amulet for some of these people. Which is a lot weaker in this stage, just because of how much easier it is to get underneath enemies. Again, these fairies you can stream, and you can really see how streaming works when you're in this kind of context. I'm going to switch to Persuasion Needle for Ran. Ran's the mid-boss, and you can see the little player icon here. The hitbox of the player is actually smaller than it looks, and that's something you want to definitely make use of. This card looks intimidating, but almost all of this is aimed at you, so you can move like that side start like that. I'm going to switch to Homing Amulet. When you have to do a larger side set, you want to move like that. And if you can't get under Ran, just switch to Yukari Amulet. It's your best option. This card is hard. If Ran's movement RNG is bad, this can be a giant pain. And kind of just follow what I do here. And that brings us to the second half of the stage. So this second half is a lot more random than the first half, but there are still plans for it. You stream the fairies that shoot in the long lines because you take one of those lines, you just eat so many bullets. These fairies, again, entirely streamable and learn. So if you know what you're doing, these aren't too bad. Just misdirect the bullets like that. These fairies are just very random, so if you want to take them out because if there's too many of them, this phase becomes just... It turns into a straight-up dodging fest with no tricks. if you can take him out quickly. And so you want to use that Carry Amulet because these guys are big enough. But otherwise, and that was just like 3 there. Want to use Homing Amulet for this phase. Again, misdirect this. Fairly trivial. Flawless second half. Alright, that's the end. This stage, by the way, if you are into Touhou, you may recognize is basically a phase-for-phase remake of the extra stage from Touhou 7. And now we're back at the shrine. So canonically, the Hikari Shrine connects Gensokyo and the outside world. So, in fact, of course you're back here. If you want to get out of Gensokyo, you're going to, you have to be here. And the plan will continue, despite what your behavior has been like. You still need Yukari's permission to exit Gensokyo. So, welcome to Yukari. So this is, my tactical advice is, again, be willing to use your bombs, but otherwise, kind of follow what I do here. You'll want to try and save as much health as possible for the later phases, because this fight gets nasty. I'm going to switch to Hikari Amulet for a very specific reason. You'll see why. Otherwise, the thing about this card is that despite how it looks, the blue bullets are all aimed at you. So you want to just kind of tap dodge those by streaming them. And you might remember that Reimu had that one card where she could warp around the boundaries of the map. Yukari does this as an ambient ability. Anytime she walks into a border, she'll teleport to the other side. She'll do it casually. Developmentally, there's not actually too much to talk about Yukari. Yukari basically was just Flandra, but not a huge nightmare. This card's weird. I will just kind of demonstrate how you're supposed to do it. Like that. It's hard to explain why that works, because the card's mechanics are pretty, eccentric. And the thing with, Yukari's non-spells are all kind of the same. She has kind of a mixture of attacks, somewhat like most of the episode 3 bosses do. And as a result, the non-spells are all kind of copies through. Why am I lagging so badly? This card normally runs relatively smoothly. Not a good mesh, but I've had worse meshes. So, yeah, the thing about Yukari is that she was actually much easier to make than Flandra for a couple of reasons. I had a lot more experience, so I wasn't as blind. The second was that most of her attacks don't require map scripting, and the one attack that required I script into the map was that much of a nightmare. This is pretty easy if you have some distance. These bubbles go diagonally, but as long as you have some distance, they're not too hard to avoid. Make sure you don't run into the blue crisscross bullets, and that's why you fundamentally need some distance. They can swiggle about a bit, but actually, as long as you... Okay, I'm losing track of her. We're going to switch to homing amulets. Ow. Okay, that was a messy ending there, but... So optimally, I don't use my... I'm going to grab the Soul Sphere. Everyone's favorite Danmaku pattern. It's just very fast and very pretty, so here's the automap view of it. Oh yeah, I should probably talk about the music choice. This theme is taken from Touhou 7.5. I chose it because it's one of her signature themes, and I feel it really sets the tone for this phase of the battle. But she changes, and I mention it because she's about to change the music to Necrofantasia. So this version of Necrofantasia is originally from Touhou... Necrofantasia, the song, is originally from Touhou 7, but this version of it's from the Touhou album Magical Astronomy. Stop teleporting behind me! Oh my god. Okay. Non-spell phase 2, with the gap phase. The way these work is that she basically just starts launching gaps that throw out random attacks from other bosses, or in some cases, from demons. You'll want to use Persuasion Needles, because these gaps have the ability to absorb bullets. So, as a result, you want to make sure that you take out the gaps as quickly as possible. There's not much trick to this. This is just straight up what it is. It took me a while to actually balance this one, because this was originally a really difficult card from Touhou 7, but trying to balance this so it felt as hard took me a while with all the crisscrossing butterflies. Again, I prefer to use laser, though I think magic missile works just as well here. And you can shoot down the portals, which is why I want to use Illusion Laser, because you want to make sure that you are relatively consistently getting a good beat on Yukari, even when there's portals in the way. This thing! This thing's actually quite hard, because you have to be able to get... So I'm going to actually grab this Megasphere earlier than I'd like to. Whoops. Timeout. Trick to this is basically use co-op spy, and this gets a lot easier. Follow the ring. This spell was a giant pain to make. The ring laser effect is a kind of, not a hack actually, but trying to get the visual effect to work was pretty hard. And yeah, the trick is, of course, the ring forces you... The ring forces you to move through these bullets. Yeah, that phase is always messy, because you have to go through the diagonal where there's twice as many. Final phase. And yeah, the ring shrinks for the last phase. Ow, not a good one. Ah, that was not good. Well, time for the last card. Okay, this card is probably the most awesome thing I've ever designed. I love this card. It is my favorite card in all of Touhou Doom. Favorite individual spell card. If you told me describe Touhou Doom in one spell card, it would be this. This is also the hardest spell card I've probably designed in all of the 3 episodes. This thing was actually one of my deaths. I entered this with 170, 170, and I still died. I played it badly, like 100% my fault, but you should never underestimate it. Come on. And yeah, it gets progressively crazier and crazier as she loses health. That is one of the cleanest borders of life and death I've ever gotten. Attempt 3, let's do this. Yukari, I congratulate you for your effort. That's it. And with that, with beating Yukari, you are now free to go to hell. You might... And you're wondering, wait, why? Well, Yukari said very specifically you had a choice. At no point did she ever say that you had a choice with consequences. If you want to say, damn it, Yukari, now's a good time. Because, of course, you're going to hell anyway. But that's it. That's Yukari. In terms of number of attempts, it took me 3 attempts to get her. Just at all. Now, that's the end of episode 3. Yukari was surprisingly smooth, and in general, it's because I knew my limitations a lot better, so I knew which things would be a pain, and which mechanics would work and which ones wouldn't. 9 out of 10 of those spells are taken from her boss fight in Touhou 7, but one of them's actually from Touhou 9.5, which was chosen because I didn't want to deal with the pain of implementing a particular spell card. Overall, episode 3 was probably the fastest episode, and not just because it was the shortest one. Episode 3 was very much me designing in my elements. I had really learned from episodes 1 and 2, and had used the skills learned from the first 2 episodes to go all in on just make maps and make it work. This feels all too familiar. You curse the boundary yokai's name as you descend into hell, once again. These demons are different. They are utilizing Gensokyo's magic into their infernal arsenal, and now it's back into hell to stop them for good. Something's not adding up, though. So, yeah, that's episode 3. I'm really happy with it. It is the episode I think on replay holds up best. All the parts feel well put together, and that's because, as I said, I had learned a lot about what things I was good at and what things I wasn't good at. It's the skills that I had learned from the previous episodes really shine without a lot of the, oh yeah, I didn't know what I was doing on this part. Next video, we'll start episode 4. But before we leave, I want to show you just a bit of bonus footage. I keep mentioning that you should never try to time out any spell card that has a timeout phase. Or correction, never try to time out a multi-phase spell card, because inevitably they do something kind of ridiculous if you try to time it out. I'm going to show you what happens if you try to time out a border of life and death. Alright, 30 seconds. Watch this mess. Yeah, this is what happens if you try to time out this card. It does not go... 300 damage taken in 30 seconds. Yeah, that's what happens if you try to cheese that card by timing it out. And yeah, I think... And I love this line. I just love that I specifically said you had a choice. I never said at any point you had a choice with consequences. And I love that line. I love it so much. It's just... Yukari be trolling, but it's such a good line. I love it. So, that's episode 3. Next video, we're going to hell.